If I were a member of parliament in Kenya today, I would be very worried. I would be very worried because earlier today, there was a storm in this country. And the storm was caused by the news that 17 members of parliament had actually tested positive for the coronavirus. And that news caused a lot of panic amongst members of parliament, the staffs working at parliament, and Kenyans in general. And what shocked me was the fact that Kenyans were actually celebrating the fact that members of parliament had turned positive. And that's why if I were to be a member of parliament, if I were a member of parliament today, I would be worried. Because if you are representing people and then they celebrate when a calamity hits you, then you should be worried. But the lessons which I learned from that news, as a matter of fact, it was fake news. But you can't also term it fake. Because we know members of parliament are also just human beings. The mere fact that they travel more than the rest of the country puts them more at risk. Remember, before parliament went to recess, there were cases which had turned positive. And this guy was reported, the MP for Rabai, who interacted with the deputy governor for Kilifi, turned positive. And the MP interacted with close to 50 members of parliament and senators. And last week, a test was done on several members of parliament. And that's why when the news about 17 MPs turning positive came up, the country was in a panic mode. And the members of parliament had to really try so hard to defend themselves. And I was going through some of them and I was shocked. Why would they defend themselves so much? These are just members of parliament. They're beyond being members of parliament. They are just ordinary people. And this disease is not selective. It doesn't select that you are a member of parliament and you are spared, or you are not a member of parliament and you are spared. And it had, let me just read for you some things which caught my attention. The first one was a statement by James Orengo. Orengo was forced to issue a statement, and James Orengo said, I took a voluntary COVID test on Friday last week. The result was conveyed to me in person by a doctor. Tested negative. It is my civic duty to continue complying with the guidelines. It's not a matter of choice. At the same time, parliament cannot abdicate, chew gum, and walk. So basically what Orengo is saying is that parliament ought to be allowed to continue discharging their duties. Remember, parliament was supposed to resume, was it today or yesterday? But because it was postponed, that's what speculated. That's what actually led to these speculations that it has been postponed because 17 members had turned to be positive. Then a fake list also circulated. And that's why I rubbished all this. Because according to that list, most of these members interacted with the late Suleiman Dori, the member of parliament for Makwiny, if I'm not wrong. And Dori just died, and there had been speculations that he was actually positive for this virus. And I was asking myself several questions. If people attended that funeral, several people, why only members of parliament who attended that funeral turned positive? And that's why I rubbished that particular news as fake news. And Lancet, which tested members of parliament, was forced to issue a statement. And in that statement, because I want us to look at the lessons which we can learn from this particular incident. There are serious lessons we can learn. Lancet issued a statement saying press statement on false information pertaining to COVID-19 testing in parliament. Our attention has been drawn to the information circulating in the social media about the recent testing for COVID-19 at Parliament ground. Pathologist Lancet Kenya is a nationally and internationally accredited laboratory that was commissioned by Parliament to carry out this test on their members. So Parliament commissioned Lancet to carry out this test. The tests were carried out voluntarily upon discussions with the relevant doctors for Parliament. The results are therefore being released by the doctors to each individual person to ensure confidentiality is safeguarded. The purported information circulating in the media about COVID-19 confirmed cases at the Parliament is completely incorrect, misleading, and should be disregarded. In particular, the information circulating both in terms of purported numbers and the names of people who have allegedly tested for COVID-19 is entirely false. I agree. The list which was being circulated is not true. That list is entirely false. You can't claim that because some people attended a funeral somewhere. Now they tested positive. But let us listen to what Lancet is saying here. Any person who turns positive for COVID-19 is informed individually by the doctors. In addition, the Ministry of Health is the only authority mandated to release COVID-19 positive results to the public. We argue the media outlets that have published the misleading information to publicly recant it with appropriate apologies to members and the institution of Parliament. So that's the statement by Lancet Kenya. But what shocked me was why the members of Parliament, if these results were issued to individual members of Parliament, how many members of Parliament and senators do we have in this country? The mere fact that a number of 17 was mentioned should not be used to discredit the fact that some of these members of Parliament might have turned positive. But let me just take you to what Gichopevu was posting. He was saying someone wants to continue bypassing the constitution to siphon funds meant for corona. This is possible if Parliament is not sitting so that they can take over roles of Parliament and run everything through decree. Plan A, leak fake info of 17 testing positive. So according to Gichopevu, this leakage was supposed to achieve certain political objective. By saying 17 members of Parliament, then it would mean MPs cannot sit. Number 2, Plan B is saying have a reason not to allow Parliament to resume. And Plan C is saying steal everything and let poor people die. I don't understand. Sometimes I really pity Kenyans. Because if Gichopevu can claim that this is meant to let poor people die, this disease, if you ask me, it has been targeting the rich. That's why Kenyans were celebrating that it had reached Parliament. But what political lessons can we learn from this particular incident where Kenyans are celebrating the mere fact that their representative in Parliament had tested positive? What lessons can we learn? And what lessons can we learn by the mere fact that members of Parliament came out full throttle to defend the mere fact that they cannot become sick of this particular disease? What political lessons? In my view, we can learn 3 or 4 political lessons. The first lesson in my view is the disclosure of the COVID-19 results. It means there's still stigma around this disease. And in my view, members of Parliament were the best people to help fight this stigma. Members of Parliament, because they represent the people. So far, we've not seen any member of Parliament coming out to publicly confess that they have tested positive. The only case which is known is that of Rabbi Member of Parliament. And Rabbi Member of Parliament tested positive because he was quarantined. The other day, the MP for Ganze, Teddy Mwambire, was also taken to a quarantine. After he was in quarantine, by the way, and he developed complications and he was taken for medication. So far, I don't know any news about his case so far. But members of Parliament need to understand one thing. That the mere fact that 2 cases were confirmed in Mandera, was it Wajir? And those 2 cases were easily communicated to the public. And within no time, the manifest of the everybody who traveled using that bus were released to public, means that even members of parliament, if these tests were done on them and they are positive, that's the same procedure which should be done. Because people need to know the kind of people they interacted with. MPs interact with a lot of people. So if an MP by bad luck is positive, then we just need to know who is this MP, who did he interact with, which constituency, and then people cannot take the precautionary measure. But now this idea of MPs trying to defend the indefensible, in my view, is not right for them. MPs must take a leading role in ensuring that there is no stigma. Take, for example, in Britain, the Prime Minister tested positive. He first of all denied the way I'm seeing the MPs deny here. But when it reached home, it has been public domain up to now, and it was ill yesterday, critically, and today he has recovered a bit. So those kind of information will help Kenyans. But defending indefensible, in my view, is a no. MPs must just appreciate that they are also human beings. And I want to tell Kenyans, MPs are also just human beings. They have feelings. So there's no need for us to celebrate when they are in problems. Number two, the second lesson which I've learned is that Kenyans are very bitter with their members of parliament. They are very bitter. Kenyans are very bitter with their members of parliament. And I can only attribute this to maybe two things. Kenyans feel that when MPs are sick, they always easily go out of the country, get treatment, and come back. Now there's an opportunity where a disease will now force them not to seek for medical attention anywhere. They'll be forced here. And that's why they were celebrating that at long last, members of parliaments who have refused to help them develop proper healthcare in the country will now share the same bed with just an ordinary member of parliament, with an ordinary Kenyan citizen. So I think that's one of the reasons why Kenyans were very bitter with their members of parliament. The other reason which I can attribute to this is the mere fact that this disease originated from abroad. So basically, those who contracted this disease were people who traveled out of the country and came back. We know that members of parliament in this country always like going outside the country benchmarking. And there's a story that majority of the people who are alleged to be positive actually traveled, went for outside trip, I don't know to UN or to where, and then they came back. So that's why Kenyans are celebrating, because these guys have been misusing their funds. And people like Moha, who can now lecture Kenyans, have never taken any minute to raise even the issue of mismanagement of travel allowances by members of parliament outside there. So I think Kenyans are very bitter with members of parliament, and members of parliament in this country should actually re-evaluate themselves and figure out what is really happening between them and the people they represent in parliament. Number three is what is coming out is that probably members of parliament are not doing the role which they were supposed to do. The role of parliament is actually to legislate and oversight. Have they been doing this? We've seen members of parliament all over in Kileweke functions. Most of them are tangering over the weekends, launching projects in the villages, which is really not their role. So today, they are expected to pass some legislation to allow the government to spend some money. They can't because of the alleged cases which turned positive, or because of the ban on travels by members of parliament. I mean, by the lockdown by President Uhuru Kenyatta. And because parliament is in Nairobi, these guys cannot sit anywhere. And there's no law which allows them to sit or to discuss things, let's say through Skype or Zoom, or even through WhatsApp. They must sit in parliament. And because of the fear of this virus, probably they can't. So Kenyans are now learning that kumbe, the role of members of parliament is really not about kutangatanga, about launching projects, but to legislate in parliament. And the other lesson which I'm also learning is that it seems members of parliament are actually missing their allowances. This is why most of them are demanding. And it's not confined to members of parliament alone. Even the MCs in Kisumu here have refused to go home to an extent that now in assembly, they are meeting like 20 of them only. So today, 20 members of, in the morning, 20 MCs, in the evening, 20 MCs. all over these countries, MCFs have refused to go home for the time being. They are still in their assemblies. That's exactly what members of parliament want. Remember, this thing happened when they were in recess and a curfew was issued, and then now the lockdown. But how do they come and start reclaiming some of these allowances? No way. And that's a big problem they are facing. I don't know what you think, but from where I sit, those are some of the lessons which I can learn from all this case. But I think as a country, we must start working very clearly on our healthcare. This COVID thing has grounded planes all over the world. All planes, airports are grounded, apart from a few which are cargo, but everything is grounded in the entire world. So there's a lesson which we must learn as a country from this particular pandemic. The lesson is very simple. Let us develop our healthcare. There's always been the case of cancer, which has been a menace in this country. Members of parliament are suffering from cancer, but they are able to go outside there and seek medical treatment. So they don't care about the state of our medical healthcare. But if you were to face a similar situation where if you have cancer, you can't go outside the country, then I'm sure MPs will allocate billions and billions of money to develop our healthcare. I don't know what you think, but I think we need to learn some of these lessons. This thing has come at a wrong time, but there are proper lessons which we can learn. Thank you guys. And if you are bumping on this video for the first time, the best thing you can do is simple. Just hit the subscribe button now so that next time we produce a video like this one, you get notified. And to the subscribers, I want to continue. Thank you guys for your continued support. Because without that support, this channel would not be where it is today. Thank you guys, and please, may you have a good day. Bye-bye.